It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly, it's about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. They got a 3-part solution for the opioid epidemic. That is speak out, opt out, and of course, throw out. We got Dr. Matt and myself. It's just us running the show today, dude. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
You know, you said something to me right before the mics cracked.
Uh-oh.
And you said, do you think that's an addiction?
Right.
And people ask me all the time, do I still have that addictive personality? And the answer is 100% yes. I've always had an addictive personality in anything that I do.
So you know that in the research of the psychology of addiction, there's a lot of professional psychologists that they don't like that term, a personality of addiction, because, and I actually know what you mean. Like, I think a lot of people have kind of an impulsive, kind of addictive sort of personality. They just kind of overdo things, right? But the worry is that if we talk about it that way, it might detract from the science of the biology of addiction. What do you think about that?
Well, I think addiction has a negative connotation to it. I think people think of addiction and they go, it's bad. It's always bad. And I think there can be healthy addictions. And I guess maybe addiction's not the...
Like what?
Gym.
Going to the gym. But can't you if it's an addiction, doesn't that rule your life? Like, going to the gym's healthy, going to the gym regularly is healthy. But if you feel addicted to the gym and you're like missing your kid's birthday party because you had to be at the gym, I mean, you know what I mean?
No, you changed my mind on that. I get what you're saying. But the things that made me a good alcoholic are the same things that make me good at other things I do. The traits that I have, I'm all in. When I sign up for something, like I've been back at the gym, I'm 6 days a week. And I'm still getting my other stuff done, all things in moderation, including moderation. Sometimes I go a little heavy on the gym. Sometimes I don't go. But I think there's certain things about me. Am I golfing too much? Probably a little bit.
But now that's part of your job.
Yeah.
Taking people out. You figured out how to play and work at the same time.
Thank you, Mountain View title.
Yeah.
You know, I take people to lunch. I take them golfing. Yeah. And so I have found a way to work that into my
I agree with you.
job.
In fact, if you think about many, or I would even say most of the guests that we've had on this show over the last year and a half, so many of them are doing these amazing things. They've started businesses. It's hard to start a business and get it going and make it successful. So many of them, whether they are in entertainment or broadcasting, those are people that they channel. Once they get sober, they channel that addictive drive, I guess you could say, into productive things, and then boom, they're successful again. It's been impressive, yeah.
You know how many times I've sat in this chair and had a guest over here where you said to us, I can see similarities in both of you.
Right.
Because there's things that we did as addicts that we worked really hard to conceive, to lie, to manipulate. And you wanted to go shake them, go, look, if you just use this power for good, you'd be unstoppable.
Right. Yeah. And there is a power there. There's that sort of obsessive focus on accomplishment. And if you can get that off of drugs and onto business or health or something, then people knock it out of the park. And I've seen a lot of that in our guests.
Now, it's because it's just me and you, and we often talk about me and my addiction here. I don't want to put you on blast,
okay,
but I do want to talk about you a little bit because you came in and you were saying that you've been working with a nutritionist.
Yes, I have.
And you've been going to the gym, you've been eating right, and to date you're down how many pounds?
Almost 8 pounds, just under 8 pounds in a month.
Now, do you think that you have a little bit of a food addiction, or what do you think happened? Because by your own admission, you put on a little extra weight.
A lot of extra weight, yeah.
And you want to get back down to fighting weight.
So, yeah, sure. I don't want to fight anybody, though. I'm more of a lover, not a fighter. But
I
know
got
what
it.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it started probably back in graduate school. And I would say if you classified my eating issues, it would be emotional eating. Right, so when you're not feeling your best, you're stress eating. And then I think it started in graduate school where I was just at the library writing papers till 2, 3 in the morning and eating out of vending machines or whatever to kind of keep myself awake, lots of soda and caffeine, just horribly unhealthy things. And then as life goes on and you
throw kids, throw a divorce, throw a job,
all that kind of stuff.
Throw the economy, the recession, COVID.
So I think, luckily, I'm grateful I didn't turn to, heroin or alcohol to kind of self-medicate. But I think food has definitely been my go-to. And, I unfortunately love the pastries and the pasta and all that good comfort food, that if you're eating it at midnight is just going to rot inside of you and make you fat. So yeah,
I know, but by no means do I think you're fat. I think that
I'm significantly overweight and it's unhealthy. And I the first part is owning that. I own that.
But the thing is that I heard one nutritionist, because I'm a guy who fluctuates in weight. I go up 40 pounds, I go down 40 pounds. Sometimes I stay in the middle, and I've always just kind of fluctuated in weight. But they say something like, the average American gains 2 to 3 pounds a year, which doesn't seem like a ton a year. You now times that by 10, that's 20 to 30 pounds.
Yeah.
20, that's 60 pounds.
I think I did that the year after I got divorced, just in 1 year.
My year after the divorce wasn't a good one either. But, that's, so right now I just got done with Robert Eastman's boot camp for kids. My kids have been doing it all summer long.
Yeah.
And I've got my son in there. And there's something I noticed, and I wanted to talk to you about it, about my son. He eats when he's bored.
Oh, yeah.
And, like all of a sudden we'll just be hanging around the house. And,
that's a huge one.
And I've got that dad ear, and I can hear the fridge opening. And I go, Bowden? Yeah? What are you doing? I don't know.
Is he doing the fridge stare where he just stands there and just stares?
Yeah.
Hoping something delicious will, manifest itself in the fridge.
And it never does, not at my house.
No, not at mine
it's
either.
like, hey, what's in the styrofoam
It's
container?
still the same thing that was in there a minute ago.
Any Taco Time burritos left? Nope. No. Dang it, I'll have an orange.
Yeah.
But he's eating out of boredom. So I try to have a conversation. I go, why are you eating? He goes, I don't know, Dad, there's nothing to do. Well, let's not eat.
Right.
Let's go find something to do.
Boredom is a huge cause of overeating, for sure.
And so that's what I'm trying to have a conversation with him. So I would love to have somebody come in, a nutritionist or somebody who suffered from an eating addiction, and kind of talk about that, because I think that's more relatable for our audience than a lot of the other stuff we're talking about.
Well, I think, what we do know, if you look at statistics, Utah as a state, we have a huge problem with obesity and sugar. I think we're the number one chocolate producing state in the United States. I've heard that. I can't verify that. But we produce chocolate here. We eat chocolate here. Ice cream. I think we sell more ice cream per capita in Utah than anywhere else. And I'm guilty of loving both of those things. Ooh. And so, I think it's very relatable. Unfortunately, a lot of people who get clean and sober from drugs or alcohol, what do they turn to? Tobacco and sugar.
Yeah.
Right? And so sugar is a real problem. It gives you a terrible little boost. I mean, it's just not even worth what it does to your body, but you get a little bit of boost. But more than anything, it's a dopamine trigger. When you're eating it, you're satiating your body. So evolution trains our body to be satiated or happy when we eat, because that keeps us alive, right? Mm-hmm. So dopamine gets going because it's a pleasurable activity. The problem is if you feel bad, not hungry, but if you feel bad, you can get a similar response by eating lots of food, lots of sugar, pastas, breads, sugars, all those things, that are so good, so delicious, but turn to fat because your body just can't process it all. It's too much.
I remember when I was in the recovery center, still hazy, first week there, and they made us go to the gym. Mm-hmm. And I went to the gym, and it wasn't fun. I just felt like crap. My life was falling apart, and I was like, well, I don't even know I'm here. And this one guy goes, hey, just work out with me. And I go, okay. He goes, you'll feel better afterwards. My little brother says it all the time. He said, the gym and church are the same. Nobody wants to go at first, but they're always happy they did.
I like that, yeah.
And so.
Feel better afterwards.
Yeah, you always feel better afterwards. And so I started working out with him, and I remember making this conscious decision. I go, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to leave rehab with more habits than I came in, and I'm going to change my lifestyle because I've been fit and I've been fat. And so I go, I'm going to get back to fit. And I really, really liked it because, within the first week, my body was feeling better. I could see definition in my arms and I could see the progress. And that gave me more fuel to keep moving. And now we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of my sobriety date. Yeah. And I'm probably down 40 pounds and probably up, I don't know what percent muscle, but I mean, I'm looking good in the shirt.
Yeah, you look a lot. You look fit. You look strong. You're looking a lot better than back in the drinking days.
2 years ago, before this all went down, I'm laying in bed. I'm watching TV. Bowden's right next to me, and he takes his hand, and he goes right next to my tummy, and it shakes like the earthquake we just had.
Get the jiggle?
Yeah, it was bad. And I go, hey, and he goes. Jiggles again. I go, hey. And
he's like Santa Claus.
He goes, Dad, why is it doing that? And I was just like, oh, man. And so even he was 7 at the time. I know my 7-year-old notices that this is getting out of control.
See it wiggle, see it jiggle.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And so now we're trying to work out as a family together. And I think that is something that you need to do. I saw this meme today real quick, and then we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about some terms that we learned in last week's episode, because you didn't want to stop them, but they were very insightful, and I want to know what they're all about. Hold on, I got to find this. Oh, what's her name? Oh, I see so much good stuff on the internet.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do. I'm trying to think of it. Well, hold on.
Good stuff on the internet. That's almost an oxymoron.
There is. Yeah. But it said something like this, and because I can't find it, it says, working out has been known to improve happiness and healthiness.
Has been known.
Yeah.
It does.
But it's one of those things that, hey, this is something that you can do. Doesn't cost a lot. You can go for a walk.
Well, in fact, you said going to the gym. I don't go to the gym. I just work out at home. We have a cheap, I think Walmart weight set that I bought years and years ago, and my boys use it a ton. But I just work out in the storage room in my basement, and that's been producing results. And you can do isometric exercises. You don't even need weights to be able to tone up and put on muscle.
Well, you can use your body weight. Another thing I learned is...
I can't, though. It's too much.
I learned this in rehab because some guys in there came from there. They go, there's such thing as a prison workout. All you need is 10 Bibles, and you can get a great workout.
Yeah.
You're listening to Project Recovery right here on KSL. Coming up, we're going to talk about some terms that we learned last week with Jason Coombs' episode on Project Recovery.
Two years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America. But the story didn't end there.
It was very cold. There was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen.
Welcome back to Project Recovery. Last week, if you haven't heard it yet, make sure you go download it. Jason Coombs came in and talked about his addiction and what he's doing now, and he's got a recovery center up in Idaho. He's actually got 2.
2, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he said something.
And that's a great example of what I mean by taking that obsessive focus
that
you were talking about. And, starting 2 recovery centers, and they're successful, and he's written a book, and it's out there for people to buy.
Got his master's at Westminster.
Got his master's degree. All of that since getting sober. And so, if you're out there struggling with addiction, you may consider the fact that you've got something inside of you. If you can unlock it, get clean and sober and put it into something productive. I mean, the success stories are endless.
So he said a term that you wanted to expand a little on. What is that term?
So he was talking about change, right? Mm-hmm. And whether we're talking about drugs or alcohol, food, exercise, any kind of behavior that you feel, man, I just really need to change this. I'm lazy or
but wait
I'm
a minute.
unmotivated.
They say a leopard never changes its spots.
Yeah, that's not true. I mean, it is for leopards, if we're being literal.
But people say that
because behavior change is hard. It is really hard.
I've talked to my family members, and we've talked about other people, and I've said this to them multiple times. They go, yeah, but they're never going to change. People don't change. And I go, do you guys really believe that? And they go, yeah. And I go, then how am I here?
Right.
And they go, but no, but. Change. People do change. And I think that's a stigma that a lot of people get stuck on. Once an addict, always an addict. Maybe that's true. They'll maybe always have that addictive personality or that addiction, and they can't go back to it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean a person can't grow, can't become a phoenix and fly out of the fire.
Right. I like it. Phoenix from the fire. That's
you like that?
Visual, yeah.
That's a little Harry Potter.
Well, I like it, yeah. The other saying is you can't teach old dogs new tricks. We have these colloquial sayings because there's an element of truth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, change is hard. It's difficult. I think most people, myself included, it's easy to kind of find, the easy path or the lowest common denominator.
Your lane.
Yeah, my lane. Whatever my lane is, you get there and you just kind of coast.
This is who I am.
The older you get, the less curious you are to explore and do things, so the more you stay in that lane, right, as you get older. And so it is hard to teach old dogs new tricks. But we can change and grow, and we've seen it here on the show all the time, and hopefully everybody's experienced some of that in their own life. But there is science behind behavior change, meaning there's a lot of research because, especially in the field of psychology, but other related fields as well, that's what we're all about. We're talking about how do we improve health habits? How do you take even a group of people, something huge like a city, and let's say that city has a problem with obesity. So how do we get those people healthy? Or how does an individual person get up off the couch and start exercising? Like what how do people change? Because we see other people do it, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's whole industries built upon this.
Of course, yeah. All the gyms, nutrition, everything is all about changing. And midlife, you and I are in our midlife, and that's another kind of interesting, and then we'll get back to this, but in midlife is a time where people naturally reflect on who they are and where they're at. And they kind of look back on your life, and it's a natural process. Everybody does it. It's a psychological stage of development. And you go, kind of done all the big things, right?
I thought it was going to be different, but here we are.
I graduated from high school. I went to college, or I got a job, or both. I got married, got divorced.
Had some kids.
And you're kind of like, okay, I've kind of done all those adult things that I kind of thought about doing when I was, 18. And now what's next? And how do I like where it's landed me? And many people have that midlife reflection where they make changes, and we don't always notice. Sometimes it's getting back into shape, like I'm trying to do, and you've been doing. Sometimes it's curbing other behaviors, like, man, I really do need to stop smoking. I can't smoke my whole life. That's unhealthy for me. Or sometimes it's something like learning to save money or quit being a grump, or whatever. Sometimes people make these little vector changes that take them in a trajectory that they want to go in. Because right now, if you think about if you do nothing else in your life, can you pretty well predict where you're going to be in 10 years or 20 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like
somewhere on a golf course.
Hopefully. So we're heading that way. So some people freak out in the midlife, though, and that's too much like stress for them. And they regress, and they start to think, well, I missed out.
I need to go buy a Porsche.
No, it's Corvette in Utah. You got to go buy me a Corvette. They kind of blow their life up in an effort to move forward. But many people make exciting changes. Some are big. I mean, how many people do you know have gone back to school, finally got their college degree, or lost 50 pounds or whatever.
I've often said that, when I say often, it's just some dumb things that I say. But, the first job that we take or what we kind of do is out of necessity because we got married, we're starting a family, and we're doing this. And then all of a sudden you get to this point and you go, but this is not really what I'm interested in. So now people are having a second career going, I always wanted to do this. I always thought I'd be good at this. And so now the life expectancy is longer, so we've got more time to explore those options.
Right.
Where most people, 40, 50 years ago, if you made it to 65, 70, you're doing pretty good. Now we're living to 75, 85,
right.
and on.
Well, I think most people hope 80 at least, right?
Yeah.
And the world's changed, back in those days, a company wanted you to stay with them for your whole career and you get the watch when you're done and all that. And that's just not how it works anymore. Right? And so, there aren't too many places you can just jump in and stay for 40 years. So
to get back to the change thing, what is the science behind change?
So if somebody's out there listening and they want to read more on this, you can Google the cycle of change, and the authors are Prochaska and DiClemente, but you don't need to really remember that.
The cycle of change.
The cycle of change. How does change happen? And so our guest last time,
Jason Coombs.
Yep, Jason. He mentioned a couple times his process of change, and he used a term which is also he talks about in his book. He said, I was in pre-contemplation.
Yeah, when he said that, I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Right, and I thought, well, I'll sound kind of obnoxious if I stop his story and try to explain that. So I thought, well, we'll come on next time, and we'll talk about it because this is what we're all about. If you're listening to this show, you or someone you know or love probably needs to change some addictive behaviors that they have. And so there is a process, and it's kind of an upward spiral, but there are steps to it. And you go through this cycle, but the cycle isn't flat, it's upward. And every time you go through the cycle, you get a little bit better, a little bit stronger.
You learn something.
For some people, you can go through the cycle once, and they've changed the behavior and they stick with it. For a lot of people, we have to go through that cycle many times before we get to where we want to be. But pre-contemplation is a stage where you are deep in the behavior that that is unhealthy, and you have really no insight to the fact that this is a problem.
Well, that's probably me and my drinking.
Right.
You know what I mean? I
People, I'm funnier when I'm drinking, or I'm happier when I'm drinking, or
I'm creative when I'm drinking.
Creative. I've known people who are like, if I'm drinking, then I get along well with other people. I can't get along well with people if I don't have a few drinks, So you're in that pre-contemplation, meaning you're not even contemplating the fact that there's a problem. And so Jason referenced that in his story a few times. And I think if you think back to our guests, everybody tells that's kind of when they were running and gunning. Is that the term you like to use?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pre-contemplation, that gets you in trouble, right?
Every single time,
Yeah.
I
think we see it on college campuses a lot, fraternities, like everybody just drinking and partying.
But to me, I thought that was the norm. Mm-hmm. I thought that's what everybody did. I thought it was...
Depending on your social group, you might be around other people that are doing the
same
thing.
I can tell you right now, the social group I was around at the time, that was the normal. You know what I mean? That's just what we did. And if somebody was to take a look from the outside, they go, you guys do what? How often? Yeah, that's not good. But we were just doing what we thought we were supposed to be doing.
Right.
As stupid as it sounds.
Well, context, situation does imply certain behaviors. So if you're at work, you act differently than if you're, at the beach.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a fraternity, what do fraternity guys do, right? They tend to party. So.
Well, we also do philanthropic work.
Yes, and study hard and get good grades.
Yeah.
Yes. So pre-contemplation, that's kind of active addiction, if you want to think of it that way. That's a time when somebody's just partying and they have no insight. Now, often something will happen. It's probably not quite rock bottom yet, but something will happen, a consequence of this behavior of either, if it's a person who's overweight because they have an eating addiction, they go in for a checkup and the doctor says, whoa, buddy, yeah. You're not healthy, or maybe it's
ruined a birthday party, ruined a family reunion.
Are we talking from experience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, where I've done some things, and it was the day after or 2 days later, going, "Hey, I don't know if you can remember what happened, but that wasn't a good time for anybody." What are you talking about? Everybody had a good time. No, not everybody did. You did, and you were somewhat oblivious to how bad people were.
Right.
And I would almost be taken back. I was like, what do you mean? It was a party.
So in those, getting that feedback from people, did you start to realize maybe there is a problem? You're not committed. So contemplation is stage 2. You're contemplating, well, maybe there is a problem. There's no intention yet to change. Nobody in contemplation is thinking about changing and going to rehab, but they're starting to have consequences where they go, maybe I need to dial it back a little.
I think on both sides of that, I think when I was confronted with that, people would bring it to your attention, and they weren't suggesting that you need to change either, but going, hey, you got a little out of control. That wasn't good. Mm-hmm. And you go, did I? And then both sides kind of discount it. They go, I did my part. I told you about it. You acknowledged that it happened, and let's just move on. So probably in those first initial stages, it wasn't until probably the 5th or 6th time that we've had these conversations, I was like, there might be something to this.
Well, people in that first stage, pre-contemplation, they're having a lot of consequences. None of them are sinking in yet, right? Yeah. It's not until 1 or 2 of them start to really get your attention that you're going to go into contemplation. But remember, that's just contemplating or thinking about, maybe I do drink a little too much, or okay, I see what you're saying, and you see that maybe your behavior is a little out of control,
right?
But still no thought about change. Then usually people stay in that stage for a long time, and that's where you talk to people who are like, well, I'm cutting back. I'm just going to cut back.
I'm only drinking beer tonight.
Right, that kind of
thing. No hard
thing.
liquor, just drinking beer.
So they're talking in a way that sounds like they're making changes, but they're not really. They're not talking. They're like, well, nobody can tell me I can't drink. I can drink however I want.
Don't you even think about telling me I can't drink. Yeah. Who are you?
Right.
But I mean, I lived in that stage for maybe a decade or more, to be honest with you.
Oh, I think that stage can last for a very long time.
That's when I'd go back to go, hey, some days I win, some days I lose.
Mm-hmm.
And
kind of justify your behavior.
Yeah, rationalize it.
Strikes and gutters, baby.
Strikes and gutters, baby. Strikes and gutters, baby.
So the next stage.
Wait there.
No, okay.
Let's not get to the next stage. We're going to stop right here. We're going to go to the next stage in part 2 of this episode. You're listening to Project Recovery at KSL Podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.